Well, in principle, the officers at the border are working on local, regional, national, and indeed international perspectives. So they must have an awareness of regional, national, international issues, and not necessarily dwelling on local neighbourhood policing is what the mainstay police officer is. So you've got to equip them with a range of skills and awareness, so they can look a bit more laterally, a bit more expansively on the range of threats that they face. You need them to be politically aware. You need them to be very much aware of current affairs. For example, that they should know the peculiarities around the changing rules and regulations to do with the European Union. For example, where they know what the particular visa regulations are, and the documents are that people move through the border, and so they can spot the anomalies and work with their colleagues in the UK Border Agency to pick out what's abnormal from what's normal, and therefore you're trying to equip officers with a range of intuitive skills that we can try to support them with some evidence-based information and intelligence practices. Well, principally in the United Kingdom, the officers who work at the border, police officers who work on the border, are nationally funded officers from counter-terrorist grant given by the UK government, and that's principally because we're outside of Schengen, we're an island nation, and we take great pride in protecting our freedoms and our values of British society. And therefore you are working slightly, although we are part of the EU, we're working outside the Schengen countries. And therefore, when we look at our counterparts in Europe, they have different policing arrangements at the border, and indeed one would recognise that largely the EU did away with border controls, except at the external border. But there should be no borders between freedom of movement of passengers and goods between the UK and the rest of Europe. So that brings complexities in terms of working in partnership with other police forces. Absolutely. I think you pick up, I'm an Irishman, I suppose we say, well, I can't talk to you until I know you. And it's a bit like that. You've got to know who is on the other side of the channel, who you're dealing with, and spend time with them, and then find supportive and effective exchange measures. The EU has funded two principal bodies to look after borders. One is Frontex, which looks after immigration matters and has a remit that looks at certain aspects of criminality also, but that's to do with the external border. Europol has not got a border function, but it provides briefing material to look at organised crime and counter-terrorism threats. But so we try to work with the EU-funded organisations that look at that. The EU equally has funded a number of different policing organisations, policing structures that assist with the cooperation, and we work with them. We mentioned there's, for example, if you look at the various modes of transport that move across the frontier, you get across by air, by rail, and by boat, and by vehicle. So the EU has funded a number of bodies to look at the movement against that criminal phenomenon. So we equally then, through the CCIC, through the Cross-Channel Intelligence Community, which looks at the arrangements between the North Sea in particular, that we assure that we are working with those agencies, and back on with Frontex and the Europol and the various established international arrangements, that we're maximising the benefits there are to for nations. I like the quote that Sherlock Holmes says to Dr. Watson. He says, and he's talking to Dr. Watson encouragingly. He says, there are many people who see, but there's not many people who observe. And again, we're trying to equip our officers continually to increase that intuitive nature, that look and feel, and support it with evidence-based information, so they can effectively be intelligence-led and target against the range of counter-terrorism and criminality threats that move through our borders. The whole aspect of the Olympic Games is about leaving a legacy. There's a legacy for the general well-being of communities, but in terms of policing, it's developing a legacy that we can have a more effective arrangements with our European partners, and so we're looking for a step change away, raising the bar in terms of effective policing, and we would seek to lay down some of the learning we're doing from here, so that we can look at better operational planning, better practical exercises and operational outcomes. And that's got to be a direct benefit of the Olympic Games as translated into policing. We're aware of the threats. You'd expect us to be. We're paid to understand what the threats are, and we'll try to mitigate and risk assess out those threats as we move forward. But yes, the Olympic Games is about leaving a legacy. It's about a sense of smile in your face and making people safe and feel secure. And indeed, the legacy is to keep a smile on people's faces. We can't promise that all the times because crime happens and terror happens. But we're doing our best to move forward in a positive way.